So I'm Peter Gray, and I'm a professor of psychology at Boston College. Most recently, I'm author of a book called Free to Learn, which is about how children are designed by nature to learn through their self-directed play and exploration. Children come into the world biologically designed to play and explore and learn that way. They learn an enormous amount about the world around them before anybody ever really systematically starts to teach them. As children get older and we send them to school, we quash all of that. Their own questions now don't count, so the curiosity gets taken away. It's not even the teacher's questions that count, because it's the curriculum's questions. Even the teacher may not be truly interested in the questions, right? So suddenly your own curiosity doesn't matter. This basic motive for learning is taken away when you're in school. Curiosity is how children find out about the world, find information, and play is the means by which children practice all kinds of skills: social, intellectual, physical, emotional skills too, because in play, children often play in risky ways and they learn to control their fear. Well, democratic education is a term that's used for schools that are really run by the students and staff together. That's what makes it democratic.
I did go to what you would call a democratic school. I went to Suburbs Valley School in Framingham, Massachusetts. A democratic school or democratic schooling is really just the form in which the school is run. It's not really so much everyday life as just how, in what way they practice authority. So instead of, what you experience a lot in public school, where there's kind of, a set hierarchy, student, teacher, vice principal, principal, whatever, and then the school board director, where you have to adhere to whatever it is they say. A democratic school lets you challenge the authority that you seem to have in place. It lets you kind of decide where you lay in, that society. You kind of choose your own adventure.
There's a very strong decline in play over recent decades. It's not just the last few years there's been a decline. There's actually been a decline for at least the last half century, probably more. There's a historian of play, Howard Chudikoff, who describes the first half of the 20th century as the golden age of children's play. And since about 1955, he argues with good data, there's been a continuous decline in children's freedom to play away from adults, where they're structuring their own play. There's especially a decline in outdoor play.
I spent a lot of time outside, playing with my friends. We'd invent all sorts of games, from throwing acorns at each other to, mock war. And we'd actually, one of our favorites was we used to build little societies in the hills with slate and sticks. We'd build little towns and then usually destroy them. But it was pretty fun, figuring out how we looked at society through just playing and having fun with your friends.
Over this same period of time that there's been a decline in children's freedom to play, there's been a continuous rise in all sorts of mental disorders among young people in our society. And in my book, Free to Learn, I argue that there's a cause-effect connection between the two. And this decline has come about for a number of reasons, but it's a huge decline. It's come about in part because of an increased fearfulness in our society about allowing children outdoors. Parents are afraid of some awful thing might happen, whereas parents didn't used to worry about that. It's not that the outdoors is really more dangerous than it was in the past, but we believe it is. And there's the media emphasizes any awful thing that does happen, so people think awful things happen more often than they do.
Suburbs Valley School is a private school that uses an alternative schooling model. It's called unschooling, and the way it works is it kind of takes a whole different look at the way education should be, and instead of classes and grades and all that sorts of stuff, we have on a 150-person school with only about 6 or 7 staff members, and we have no teachers and no classes and no grades, and it is self-driven, self-taught learning.
You know, I learned in the same way that we've been doing inadvertently for 1,000 years. I talked with my peers, and my peers, unlike in a formal public school system, weren't just people my age. I had a broad spectrum of different people to talk to, from the age of 4 to the age of 19 or 20 often sometimes. And you know, that really affected, I grew up a lot faster because I had access to a lot older people who I could bring up, you know, subject matter that I would never have experience with until much later in my life.
I think I'm learning in so many ways. I'm learning just from living every day. Like, my parents are really hands-off, so I do all my banking, I do taxes, I do all of that. I just learn through living life, and I feel like that's the best way you can learn, because I'm learning how to be a functioning adult and being independent. And I feel like going to SVS is giving me the confidence to go into things with that independence that I need. So I'm not told what I have to do all the time, so I'm constantly making decisions for myself about the day, and if I didn't do that, I feel like I wouldn't be nearly as independent and as mature as I am now.
So I always get the question, how do you learn, when people are asking about the school. There you go. How do you learn at Suburbs Valley School? There's no classes. Like, how does it work? Well, I mean, how do adults learn? Honestly, like, in the real world, you can't expect someone that just got out of like public school to have the same knowledge as an older adult that's been working forever. And you know, that's really we learn the same way. We pick stuff up from around us, we figure it all out ourselves. It doesn't work for some people, it does work for some people. It works for me.
Children should grow up experiencing democracy, and so they were going to create a school that was fundamentally a democratic community where students as young as 4 years old truly experience democracy. They are responsible for their own decisions, and they have a vote in all of the important matters of how the school operates.
At the core of Suburbs Valley, there's a few tenets of the school that are pretty vital. One of them is age mixing, another is the structure of the school. The school meeting is the governing body of the school. It's based on a New England town meeting. So everyone who's a member of the school, a student or a staff member, including 4-year-olds, is considered a school meeting member. And all of our rules are also begin as motions in the school meeting, and every action of the school meeting, as it is at the service of school meeting members, is in the hands of school meeting members. So everyone has an equal vote on really everything that has to do with the governance and running of the school.
Any student, you know, was able to bring up a problem or a solution or anything they wanted to, and the rest of the meeting would deliberate on whether it should happen or not.
And so then one branch of the school meeting is the judicial committee. That's kind of like the obvious branch that you see because they meet every day, and everyone has to be part of it at some point, unlike a lot of other parts of the school where you're not really required to do anything. So the JC meets every day and they deal with all infractions of the rules.
Let me start with the measurement of the success, because that was my first question. Many, many years ago, my son became a student there. He was 10 years old at the time. And he knew it was the right place for him. I wasn't absolutely sure. This was a radically different school. At that time, I did a study of the graduates, which I published in the American Journal of Education, ultimately. And that study convinced me that it works as an educational institution. My measure of it working was that the students were going on successfully in life. Those who wanted to go on to higher education weren't having any difficulty getting admitted to the schools they wanted to go to or performing well once they were there. Even those who'd never done anything looked like school before. I mean, this just violates everything we think is true in our society about how you need to prepare in order to go into college. Students who'd never taken a test until they took the SAT test, or students who'd never studied a textbook. They'd done a lot of interesting things and their minds were bright, but they hadn't taken what would be regarded as the prerequisite courses, and yet they got in, right? One of the principles of democracy is sort of the right to pursue your own path to happiness, to chart out your own route in life, and that is part of the philosophy of Sudbury Valley.
I want to do an intensive Korean language program in Seoul, Korea, and then after that I want to go to Europe for the rest of the year once I turn 18.
You know, I like business a lot, but at the same time, I'm not as passionate about it as I am history, and I'm just trying to figure out right now, I guess, a way that I can make a career in history. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a lucrative one, but, you know, at least one that'll keep me alive. Right?
I'm someone who's really independent, and I don't want to learn all the things the curriculum throws at me. I'd rather study Korean or study art or something I actually care about and that I'm going to use in the future. Studying Korean is probably my biggest passion in life.
My plans after leaving Sudbury Valley School, I don't really have a plan for college at the moment, but I don't feel like I'm in a rush. Honestly, I have no problem with just working until I figure out what I want to do with my life, and I've got a lot of good ideas, but I don't have anything set at the moment.
And it was very interesting to find that they had gone on to a very wide variety of careers. There didn't seem to be any type of career that we value in our society that there weren't some of the graduates who had gone on to. I would say about half of them were pursuing careers that were direct extensions of the activities that they were playing at when they were young students at the school. One thing that's already happening is that a growing number of people are taking their kids out of standard schools.
On a theological level, I think the problem with public schools is that they kind of assemble classes and learning as a series of, hurdles that you have to jump over that eventually lead to a good job and a happy life and 2.5 kids and a dog in the suburbs. Whereas learning shouldn't have an end. Learning is forever.
I think my schooling is the most beneficial thing to my emotional state ever. I left public school when I was 14, so at the end of 8th grade, and I had so much social anxiety. I was super introverted, which isn't a problem. Introverted people rock, but I feel completely comfortable talking to strangers now. I feel really just confident in myself. I feel so much better emotionally than I ever have before. I feel like each year I'm at SVS, I get even better, and I just get older, and that life is so much happier and amazing.
When I'm interested in something, I go out and do it. Because I'm so interested in it, it's just that's motivation itself. I feel like I'm not really gonna use, some subjects that they might teach in public school in my life, because that's not really part of what I want to do.
There's been a decline over the years in young people's sense of being in control of their own lives. There's a measure called the Rotter's Internal-External Locus of Control Scale that has been given to normative groups of college students and high school students from about 1960 on. And with every decade that this has been given, there's been a decline in people's sense of what's called an internal locus of control, that they are in charge of their own fate, that they can solve their own problems, that they are not victims of the world around them, but are masters of their fate, if you will. There's been a decline in that and an increase in the sense of anything could happen at any time and there's nothing that I could do about it, or other people have control of my fate. Of course, there's always some balance. Nobody's extreme one way or the other on this, but the shift has been away from internal locus of control and towards external locus of control.
I grew up kind of, playing and having all sorts of experiences, learning through our JC, getting brought up all the time, and kind of growing up and being a teenager isn't particularly awesome, but the community at Sudbury Valley is one of my favorite things. The people, on the last day of school, everyone is crying and emotional because people who we've gotten to know over years are leaving and like going into the real world and are and I'm graduating this year and all I've known is Sudbury Valley, so the thought of leaving is kind of scary, but I'm definitely ready to be a contributing member to society.
This school definitely is not for everyone, but public school also isn't for everyone either.
Yeah, I think that if I was in classes every single day, all day, I would be so stressed out and not be as functioning nearly as well as I am right now. It's much more relaxing to be able to do stuff at my own pace, really learn what I want to learn.
I would explain it as a place where you go and you do what you want and you discover your passions. I think that's the essence of the school, to learn what you love, because that's what you are going to do for the rest of your life. And that's how you're going to be happy. I feel like the school has taught me to enjoy the moment, but the moment is for building my future. So I'm always enjoying my time at SVS, but I'm always looking forward to what's going to happen next.
Children are constantly practicing creativity and imagination in play. Play is always creative. It's part of the definition of play. Children are creating the rules. They're creating the game as they're playing. Most obvious, little children playing what's called sociodramatic play. They're playing house, or they're playing superheroes, or they're imagining that they are beings that they truly, really aren't. Think of what they're learning when they do that. They're learning to imagine. They're learning to think logically within this imagined world. If I'm this, what do I have to be like? If this happens, what am I supposed to do if I'm Wonder Woman? And so they are practicing what I think everybody would say is the highest level of human thought, hypothetical reasoning. Hypothetical reasoning, which is the reasoning that scientists use when they're thinking of theories and testing theories. It's the reasoning that all of us use if we just think about what might happen tomorrow and how will we prepare for tomorrow. Children are constantly practicing that in play. I think it's especially compatible with our current society, if you think about it. As everybody acknowledges, today we need people who are creative. We need people who are innovative. We need people who think outside the box, as they say. We don't need people who are good at memorizing facts and feeding them back. I mean, we've got Google for that, right? We don't need people to work on assembly lines. We've got robots for that.
I definitely would not be the person I am today if it wasn't for Sudbury Valley. I wouldn't have the same love for learning I wouldn't have the same love for learning. I wouldn't have the same appreciation for the acquisition of knowledge, and I just wouldn't be the same person. I think I would fit in a lot more with the norm, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing.
I personally believe that at some point there will be enough people who have taken their children out of standard schools that this group will then be a significant voting bloc and moreover, everybody will reach a point where everybody will know somebody who became educated through their own self-direction rather than through coercion and the kinds of systems that we have in our standard schools. And once that happens, people will say, why should I force my child to go to school if my child is not happy there? And then I think because I can see down the block, so-and-so is doing very well in life, and they did unschooling, or they went to a Sudbury model democratic school. And I think that at that point, the floodgates will open. We'll reach a tipping point where enough people know about this and enough people know that it works that suddenly people will choose this different route to education. And then the public schools will either become irrelevant or they will have to adapt. They will become centers for self-directed education.